Stop searching for a job. Not because work is unimportant, but because God's plan for your life is bigger than a position, a salary, or a title. Many people believe their breakthrough will come when someone hires them, but often the real breakthrough comes when God reshapes them. You see, God does not think like man. Man looks at experience, age, connections, and qualifications, but God looks at the heart, the character, and the calling. When God delays a job, He is often accelerating a destiny. There are times when we knock on doors again and again, and they refuse to open. We feel rejected, overlooked, and confused. But rejection by man can be protection by God. If God allowed you to enter every door you wanted, you might end up in a place that limits your future. God sees what you cannot see. He knows which environment will drain you, which people will distract you, and which path will delay His purpose. That is why some opportunities disappear, because they are not aligned with heaven's plan. Waiting is not easy. In waiting seasons, fear tries to speak louder than faith. Bills still come, expectations still rise, and pressure still increases. But this is where faith is refined. Waiting teaches you to depend on God instead of systems. It teaches you to hear His voice more clearly. It teaches you patience, humility, and obedience. The waiting season is where God strengthens your inner life, so that when the blessing comes, it does not destroy you. God never releases a blessing before He prepares the person. If your character cannot sustain the success, God will delay the success to protect your character. Many people lose their peace, their faith, and even their families because they stepped into something before they were spiritually ready. God's delays are filled with mercy. He is shaping your mindset, healing old wounds, and building spiritual strength so that you can stand firm when responsibility increases. Obedience is more powerful than opportunity. Sometimes God asks you to serve when you want to lead, to stay quiet when you want to explain, and to trust when you want answers. Obedience positions you in the center of God's will. When you obey God, even in uncertainty, you activate divine alignment. Suddenly, things begin to fall into place without struggle. You don't chase opportunities. Opportunities begin to find you. Provision always follows purpose. When you chase money, fear controls you. But when you chase God's purpose, provision follows you naturally. God knows what you need before you ask. He knows the right time, the right place, and the right people. What looks like lack today may be God repositioning you for abundance tomorrow. Trust Him in the process. God is always working, even when you see nothing happening. The unseen work is often the most important work. Roots grow underground before fruit appears above ground. If you dig up the seed too early, you destroy the harvest. Faith requires patience. Rest in God's timing. Stop striving. Stop comparing. Stop panicking. God has not forgotten you. When you truly trust God, peace replaces anxiety. You stop begging doors to open and start thanking God for the ones that closed. You begin to understand that your life is not an accident and your future is not uncertain. God has a bigger plan, one that exceeds your expectations, restores your joy, and glorifies His name. So today, choose faith over fear. Choose trust over anxiety. Stop searching in desperation and start resting in divine purpose. What God has prepared for you will come at the right time, in the right way, and will be greater than anything you could have achieved on your own. God's plan is higher than human effort and greater than human resumes. Many people believe that life moves forward only by qualifications, experience, and constant striving. But faith teaches us a deeper truth. Human effort has limits, but God's wisdom has no boundary. You may polish your resume, gain new skills, and knock on many doors, yet still feel stuck. That does not mean you have failed. It often means God is protecting you from a path that looks good on paper, but does not align with His purpose for your life. God sees beyond what employers see. People evaluate based on age, background, past mistakes, or gaps in employment, but God evaluates destiny. He looks at what you are becoming, not just what you have done. When God chooses someone, He is not impressed by titles. He is interested in obedience, faith, and a heart that trusts Him even when outcomes are uncertain. This is why many people who seem unqualified are suddenly lifted into positions of influence, while others with impressive resumes remain frustrated. Heaven does not operate by human systems. There are moments when your effort feels wasted, when prayers seem unanswered, and when opportunities pass you by. In those moments, it is easy to feel invisible. But God often works most powerfully in hidden seasons. While you feel overlooked, He is shaping your character, strengthening your faith, and teaching you to depend on Him rather than your own ability. What looks like delay is often divine preparation. God knows the future you cannot see, and He prepares you today for responsibility you will carry tomorrow. Human effort says, try harder. God's plan says, trust deeper. When you rely only on your strength, fear and exhaustion follow. But when you trust God's plan, peace begins to guard your heart. You realize that your life is not a race against others, and your value is not measured by your productivity. God's timing is perfect, and His ways are higher than human logic. He can open doors no one can close, and He can create opportunities where none seem to exist. When you understand that God's plan is greater than your resume, you stop striving to prove yourself and start resting in faith. You still work diligently, but without desperation. You still prepare, but without anxiety. You begin to see closed doors not as rejection, but as redirection. In that place of trust, God lifts you at the right time, in the right way, and for the right purpose, beyond what human effort alone could ever achieve. When doors close, heaven is often redirecting, not rejecting. Many people interpret closed doors as failure, assuming that something is wrong with them or that God has said no forever. But in faith, a closed door does not always mean denial. Often it means protection. God sees what lies ahead on paths we are eager to take, and sometimes He closes a door to keep us from entering a place that would drain our joy, weaken our faith, or delay our destiny. Human rejection feels personal. A job interview that goes nowhere, an application that receives no reply, or an opportunity that suddenly disappears can deeply wound the heart. We ask why. We replay our mistakes, and we doubt our worth. But God's redirection is never about diminishing your value. It is about guiding your future. What man rejects, God may be saving for something better. What looks like loss may actually be alignment with a higher purpose. In Scripture and in life, God often redirects people through closed doors. When the way seems blocked, it is often because God has already prepared another path. Sometimes a redirection is immediate, but often it is gradual and quiet. God shifts your desires, changes your perspective, or moves you into a season of waiting. This waiting is not punishment. It is guidance. God is gently turning your steps without forcing you, because He desires your trust more than your speed. Closed doors also test the heart. They reveal whether we trust God only when things go our way, or whether we trust Him even when things do not make sense. Faith grows strongest when answers are unclear. In those moments, you learn to surrender control and believe that God's wisdom is greater than your understanding. Redirection requires humility because it means accepting that God knows better than we do. If God allowed every door to open, we might choose comfort over calling. We might settle for something good and miss something God ordained. That is why some opportunities fade away just as we think we have them. God is not cruel. He is careful. He closes doors with love, not anger. He redirects with purpose, not confusion. When you begin to see closed doors through the lens of faith, your response changes. Instead of bitterness, gratitude begins to rise. Instead of panic, peace takes over. You stop forcing outcomes and start following God's leading. You learn that the same God who closes one door holds the key to another that is perfectly timed, perfectly placed, and perfectly designed for who you are becoming. And when that door opens, you will realize that every closed door before was guiding you towards something far greater than you imagined. Waiting seasons are divine training grounds, not wasted time. Many people see waiting as punishment, delay, or a sign that life is stalled. But in God's economy, waiting is never empty. It is purposeful. When everything seems still on the outside, God is often doing His deepest work on the inside. The silence, the uncertainty, and the unanswered questions are shaping your faith in ways constant movement never could. In waiting seasons, God teaches you to listen more than you speak and to trust more than you control. When progress slows, you become more aware of your dependence on Him. You begin to realize how much of your confidence was tied to results rather than relationship. Waiting strips away false security and replaces it with a deeper reliance on God. This is not weakness. It is spiritual strength being formed. God often uses waiting to correct direction and refine motives. If he answered every prayer instantly, we might move ahead with pride, impatience, or selfish ambition. Waiting gives space for humility to grow. It aligns your desires with God's will so that when the blessing comes, it does not pull you away from him. Instead, it draws you closer. God is far more concerned with who you are becoming than how fast you are moving. In these seasons, faith is tested, but it is also strengthened. You learn to walk by trust rather than sight. Even when there is no visible progress, God is building endurance, patience, and spiritual maturity. Just as muscles grow through resistance, faith grows through waiting. The delay is not denial, it is preparation. Waiting also protects you from receiving things before you are ready. Some blessings require emotional, spiritual, and mental maturity to sustain them. If God released them too early, they could overwhelm you. So he uses time as a tool of mercy. While you wait, God prepares you to handle success with wisdom and gratitude rather than fear and confusion. What feels like lost time is often the foundation for future impact. Many people look back and realize that their most important lessons were learned in seasons when nothing seemed to be happening. Waiting teaches you to value God's presence more than his gifts. It anchors your identity in him, not an achievement. When you understand waiting this way, frustration begins to give way to peace. You stop rushing ahead and start resting in trust. You realize that God has not paused your life. He is training your heart. And when the season shifts, you will step forward with greater clarity, deeper faith, and a strength that could only have been built in a quiet place of waiting. Knowing that nothing in God's hands is ever wasted, faith grows strongest when security disappears. Many people believe faith is proven when everything is stable, when income is steady, plans are clear, and the future feels safe. But real faith is not formed in comfort. It is formed when certainty is removed, when familiar supports are taken away. The heart is forced to decide where its true trust lies. In those moments, faith either deepens or fades. Security often creates the illusion of control. When things are predictable, it is easy to say we trust God, but much of our confidence is actually placed in systems, savings, and human guarantees. When those things disappear, fear quickly rises. Yet this is precisely where faith is invited to mature. God allows instability not to harm us, but to reveal what we truly depend on. When earthly security weakens, divine security becomes clearer. In seasons of uncertainty, faith moves from theory to experience. You are no longer trusting God in words alone. You are trusting him with your survival, your future, and your identity. This kind of faith is not loud or dramatic. It is quiet, steady, and deeply rooted. It chooses to believe even when circumstances offer no evidence. It holds on to God's promises when emotions are shaken and answers are delayed. When security disappears, prayer changes. It becomes more honest, more desperate, and more sincere. Pride falls away, and humility takes its place. You stop pretending to be strong and begin to rely on God's strength instead. This dependence is not failure. It is freedom. It frees you from the burden of having to hold everything together on your own. God often uses unstable seasons to detach us from false identities. When jobs, titles, or achievement are removed, you are reminded that your worth does not come from what you do, but from who you are in God. This realization builds a faith that is unshaken by circumstances. You begin to understand that even if everything around you changes, God remains the same. Faith formed in insecurity is resilient. It is not easily discouraged by delays or setbacks. It has learned to stand without visible support. Such faith carries peace even in chaos, because it is anchored in God rather than outcomes. When stability returns, this faith does not cling to it as a source of identity. God prepares the person before he releases a position. Many people desire the blessing, the job, the promotion, or the breakthrough, but God's primary concern is not the position you will hold. It is the person you will be when you hold it. A position can be given in a moment, but character is formed over time. That is why God often works slowly, patiently shaping the inner life long before changing the outer circumstances. If God were to release responsibility before maturity, the blessing could become a burden. Pressure exposes what preparation has not healed. This is why God allows seasons of testing, correction, and growth. In these seasons, he develops humility, discipline, and spiritual stability. He teaches you how to respond to disappointment, how to handle waiting, and how to remain faithful when recognition is absent. These lessons cannot be learned quickly, but they are essential for lasting success. Preparation often happens in ordinary and hidden places. God uses small tasks, unnoticed service, and quiet obedience to train the heart. When no one is watching, integrity is formed. When there is no applause, faithfulness is tested. God watches how you handle what seems insignificant, because that reveals how you will handle greater responsibility. What you do in secret shapes what you can be trusted with in public. During preparation, God also heals inner wounds. Unresolved pain, pride, or fear can damage future opportunities if left untreated. So God takes time to restore the heart. He teaches forgiveness, patience, and trust. This inner healing is part of His kindness. He is not delaying you. He is protecting your future from collapse. Many people measure readiness by skills alone, but God measures readiness by stability. He looks at how you handle pressure, correction, and success. He looks at whether you will remain grounded when doors open. God's goal is not just to elevate you, but to keep you standing once you're elevated. When the position finally comes, it feels different because you are different. You're not overwhelmed, insecure, or desperate for approval. You are steady, grateful, and aware that the opportunity is a stewardship, not an identity. The preparation gives you confidence without pride and humility without fear. Understanding this changes how you view delay. You stop resisting the process and start embracing it. You realize that God is investing in you, shaping you for something that will last. He is building a foundation strong enough to carry the weight of the calling He intends to place on your life, ensuring that when the door opens, you will not only enter it, but remain faithful and fruitful within it. Obedience matters more than opportunity. Many people believe progress comes from grabbing the right opportunity at the right time. But in God's kingdom, obedience is the true key that unlocks lasting advancement. Opportunities can look attractive, promising growth, security, or recognition, yet not every open door is sent by God. Obedience requires discernment, patience, and humility to follow God's voice even when the opportunity in front of you seems logical and appealing. Obedience often asks you to do what does not make sense to the natural mind. God may tell you to wait when you want to move, to serve when you want to lead, or to remain faithful in a small place when you feel ready for something bigger. This can feel frustrating, especially when others appear to be moving ahead faster. But God is not impressed by speed. He is pleased by surrender. Obedience aligns you with His timing, and timing is everything in God's plan. Opportunities without obedience can lead to regret. When people move ahead without God's direction, they may gain temporary success but lose peace, joy, and spiritual clarity. Obedience protects the heart from rushing into seasons it is not prepared to handle. God knows what environments will nurture your faith and which ones will slowly drain it. By obeying Him, you avoid paths that look successful outwardly but are destructive inwardly. Obedience also trains a heart to trust God more deeply. Each act of obedience, especially the difficult ones, strengthens your spiritual sensitivity. You begin to recognize God's voice more clearly and rely less on external validation. This builds confidence that is rooted in relationship rather than results. Obedience keeps you connected to God, and that connection is more valuable than any opportunity you could ever receive. There are moments when obedience feels costly. You may miss out on recognition, income, or approval, but God never wastes obedience. What you surrender in faith, He restores in purpose. Obedience positions you for opportunities that come with God's favor rather than human pressure. When God opens a door, you do not have to force it to stay open. His provision sustains what His will initiates. God often watches how you respond to simple instructions before entrusting you with greater responsibility. Obedience in small things prepares you for faithfulness in bigger things. It shapes your character, deepens your humility, and anchors your identity in God rather than achievement. Through obedience, God builds a foundation that can withstand pressure, success, and change. When obedience becomes your priority, fear begins to lose its power. You're no longer driven by urgency or comparison. You move with peace, knowing that even if the path is slow, it is secure. In the end, obedience leads you exactly where God intends you to be at the right time, with the right heart, walking in a purpose that no missed opportunity could ever take away. God's provision follows His purpose, not panic. Many people make decisions driven by fear. Fear of lack, fear of delay, fear of falling behind. Panic pushes a heart to rush, to accept anything available, and to move ahead without peace. But God never asks His children to live in anxiety. He invites them to trust that provision is already connected to His purpose for their lives. When you chase provision without purpose, worry multiplies. When you pursue God's purpose, provision arrives in its proper time. Panic clouds discernment. In moments of pressure, it becomes difficult to hear God clearly. Fear speaks loudly, demanding immediate solutions. Yet God's provision is not released through desperation. It is released through alignment. When you are walking in God's will, even limited resources are enough. God knows how to sustain you in seasons where numbers do not add up and doors appear closed. He provides in ways that strengthen faith rather than weaken it. God is not moved by urgency. He is moved by trust. Panic says, I must act now or I will lose everything. Faith says, God is already ahead of me. When you trust God, you stop making fear-based choices that bring temporary relief but long-term regret. God's provision is steady, purposeful, and peace-filled. It may not always come the way you expect, but it always comes at the right time. Many people step outside God's purpose because they are afraid of waiting. They accept situations that compromise their peace, values, or faith because they believe survival depends on it. But God does not sustain what He did not assign. Provision outside His will often comes with heavy emotional and spiritual cost. God's provision, however, comes with rest. It does not drain your joy or weaken your relationship with Him. Purpose keeps your heart anchored when circumstances shake. When you are clear about why God has placed you where you are, fear loses its grip.